are not going to be coming back down. That was it. That was your shot at the cheap lumber. It's going to get more expensive as time goes on. And now this is something that I've been trying to warn people of here on this channel for quite some time. I work in the lumber industry. I do retail sales. I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's really no corner of this industry that I can't see. And I have been trying to share what it is that I have been viewing from boots on the ground perspective when it comes to the lumber industry, mill curtailments, inventory depletions, and the fact that there is little demand. Now, things are starting to shift within the lumber industry, and now mainly that has to do more with prices than it does with the actual demand that is picking up that is causing these prices to move. It's really due to the fact that there is a low inventory and not much that is going into production right now. If you go and you just do a little bit of research on mill curtailments and shutdowns that have been taking place over the last, really 6 months to a year, but even really longer than that, you're going to find that there has been a massive depletion in the production of lumber that has been taking place over the last 6 months to a year. Much of that taking place within Canada, but it's not just Canada, it's the United States as well. And so when we think about the suffering that takes place within the inventory levels, when you have such dramatic inventory depletion due to the curtailments and mill shutdowns that have been happening, the results of that is going to be at some point supply-demand imbalances. And now, although we are not seeing an uptick in demand, we are seeing the prices move up on the lack of available inventory that is out there. Now, I've had a lot of people push back against this idea that there's cheap lumber and low production happening, as many times it'll be like, dude, you need to go to this particular area. They're cutting all kinds of trees and pumping out all kinds of lumber. I live in the Pacific Northwest, right? I live in one of the highest lumber producing areas there is. And when it comes to lumber production, this is definitely a state that does it. And we are finding that the lumber production, the demand for trees, the issues that are happening within the forestry industry entirely, because like you have to think, lumber and timber are two different products that are happening. Everything going well here so far? We got sound and all that? Sometimes we don't get good sound coming through. Let me make sure the Wi-Fi is off. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And so what's going to end up taking place as we go into the future here is you're going to find at some point there will be an uptick in demand. Now, whether that comes from lower interest rates or government incentive or something out there that has the customer, the buyer, somewhat encouraged to get out there and start buying homes, the home builder is going to jump into the game. And now this is something that I've been trying to warn people of for quite some time, to keep your eye on this particular moment within the economy that's going to happen that will trigger that moment. And that moment will be when the buyer traffic starts to pick up. It doesn't mean that there is going to be all of a sudden this overwhelming change. It doesn't mean that interest rates have to drop. It doesn't mean that there's something else going on there that's triggering it. Whatever it is that happens that causes that, that's going to be the thing that you look for. Now, if you want to call it by government intervention, or if you want to call it by banking, industries lowering interest rates, something of that nature, then okay, so be it. But it's going to be that, right? That buyer traffic coming back to market, buying homes. The moment that that happens, the builder is going to jump into the game. Now, they have been holding back on production for quite some time, and you can see that if you just go and Google, like, home building permit issuance, what is it? Housing issuance, private home issuance, housing issuance permit, something of that nature. If you go and you Google this and just type in FRED, it stands for Federal Reserve Economic Data. If you type that into the Google search along with whatever it is that you're looking for, there's most likely going to be a Federal Reserve chart that shows the direction in which that those prices or that particular item has been moving. And building permit issuance has been declining for quite some time, like for 5 years, essentially since it peaked out in 2020, 21. I can't remember exactly where it peaked out, but it's been on the decline ever since. And now, although it's about the same level that it was, say, back in 2019 or so, it's on the way down. And that's the problem, right? It's the trajectory in which that we're headed, which is a depleting one. It's one that's continuously falling. And so when you think about this as being the case, the moment that that turns, right, when you stop seeing it fall and you start seeing it rise, that's the trigger moment. We haven't seen it yet, right? When it does happen, you are going to find the demand going into lumber is going to overwhelm the supply and the prices are going to skyrocket. Your chance at cheap lumber has now passed. Everything from this point on will be expensive and it's not coming back. Like this is gone forever. The cheap lumber is now gone forever. As we go into the future, it will be nothing but more expensive. Will it be volatile and there'll be ups and downs? Absolutely. But your chances of having cheap lumber like we experienced over the last year, that's over. That's not going to happen anymore. Right? The mill curtailments and shutdowns that have happened in Canada, along with the transferring of the dimension in which that they are actually producing. They're moving into a different style of production of lumber and building materials that is more conducive to the European market, which is done in the metric system. Once that happens, there's most likely they're not going to be switching right back. And even if you asked them to, it'll take a time. Please do this for us, right? Even if if you asked them to do it, or the demand was enough for them to actually switch, it takes time to switch, get back over into the dimension in which that the United States is accustomed to. And therefore, even if you asked them for it and wanted it, it will take time to get that production up and running and then distribute it back into the United States. This is a problem. This is a problem that we have not seen yet that will take place at some point in the future. And we can look forward to it as we see that the demand for housing has been incredibly low due to the fact that there is low buyer traffic. The moment that that switches and the buyer traffic comes back, you're going to find that everything is going to flip on its head. All right, let's go into reading. Peter says today's lumber market is compared to Peter's future. Who is Peter? What are you guys talking about? All right. Let me call back here. All-nighter hider says smoke the thumbs up like Cheech and Chong. All right. So the chance of regular working class to obtain a house will be zero from now on because of the lumber prices. Well, I mean, if you want to associate to that, that's fine. I mean, I didn't say that, but if that's the way that you want to read into the information, so be it. But it's my opinion that the working class individual most likely won't be able to get a house anyway, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the lumber prices. The lumber cost to build a house is very small comparatively to the rest of the house. I don't know how many people realize that, but the lumber component to it is a very small portion of the overall cost. In fact, like you could probably adjust the framing component. Right, the cost of the framing component can probably be more, what am I trying to say here? Like the input cost of the lumber is probably less than the input cost of what you would put into, say, like the flooring or the cabinetry or something of that nature, like for the entire house. The actual lumber component part of the entire structure is very insignificant. I don't know what the exact percentage is. Some like, I mean, I forget exactly what the lumber coalition was saying. It was something like 2 or 3%. I think it's higher than that, but it's a very small portion of it. And even if you double the lumber price, it would still not significantly increase the cost of building that home. Here's the problem that we would face when it comes to the lumber is the availability of it, because the lumber is the key component. Like without it, nothing happens. Like you cannot put a structure together without lumber. There's nothing the electrician or the plumber or anything else that anybody can do until the lumber component has been assembled. So it is the structure. It is everything. Nothing happens without the framing component first. Everything hangs off of the framing. So there's no windows, there's no doors, there's no siding. There's nothing that happens without lumber first. So a lot of people will say concrete first. Okay, that's cool. Concrete, but then the lumber component. If the lumber is not available, boom, nothing happens. Right? You can order different style of windows, right? There's windows out there, there's different doors, different siding, different roofing, different things that you can get. But if the lumber is unavailable, you're not putting that structure together. And if you're not putting that structure together, it's costing you a lot of money. right? Because time is money. So the moment that a contract gets signed that, hey, we're going to go forward with this project, we're going to build this home, and they go out there to get that lumber and there's none available, that is called inelastic demand. And inelastic demand will cause the prices to skyrocket because they're under contract. It's not like you're deciding, hey, I'm going to go build a chicken coop. You go down there like, woohoo, lumber prices are way too high, right? The availability of plywood and lumber is not available out there and the prices are up and you're like, man, I'm not building my chicken coop. That's fine. That's elastic, right? That's elastic demand. Inelastic demand is when you are under contract and you are forced to go forward with this project and you have no other choice. That could be a very real possibility if the buyer traffic comes back. If the buyer says, hey, I got the capabilities, I got government subsidies, I got a job that can pay, I got something out there, interest rates or whatever it is that's happening. I mean, make it up. I don't know, right? If that is to take place, and at some point it will somehow, somewhere, in one way or another, the demand will come back. When the demand comes, inelastic demand will be created, and the availability of lumber won't be there, and the prices will plummet. Oh, I'm sorry, the prices will skyrocket as the availability will then plummet, right? And that's what's going to end up happening with it because that's essentially what we saw take place back during COVID. Right? We just saw it in a little bit different fashion. And this is like pretty easy to see. Once you have kind of taken in those four economic theories, the four economic forces, and the bullwhip effect being one of them, where you have oversupply to undersupply to oversupply again until you find equilibrium. And sometimes that could take months, weeks, years to play out. And especially something inside of the lumber industry, I could see where this could take literally years to play out, maybe even up to a decade of oversupply, undersupply, till you finally find that equilibrium within the market. All right, wrong. You need to go read my comments again explaining why you are wrong on housing demand and the housing market. Well, you can always create your own YouTube channel and then go out there and put your information and then see how popular it is. And if you have the best story, it doesn't really matter if it's the truth. If you have the best story, then you'll be very popular on YouTube and everybody will listen to you and agree with you. The problem has never been a certain component of a house. It is the magnitude of components. Well, I would agree with that, horrible, but I think if you just look at the one main component that puts the structure together, like it's the framing. Nothing happens without framing. Like you can have different types of siding. You can have different types of everything. Like the entire house can have different types of everything that goes into it. You know, whether you use metal roofing or, asphalt shingles, whether you use fiber cement siding or cedar siding, there's so many different components. But when it comes to the lumber part of it, that's it, right? And really, it doesn't make any difference what type of lumber it is. Now, it does in the sense that you got southern yellow pine in the south and, fir and larch and hemlock up here in the Pacific Northwest. And sometimes these things get distributed amongst each other. But for the most part, a 2x4 here is a 2x4 there, and it doesn't really make any difference when it's a stud in the wall. Right? Now, the availability of that lumber is the key component, because without it, nothing happens. No structure can go together without it. And although there is many parts and components that go into it, I totally agree with that. All these other parts and components really have alternatives to it, but not the lumber, right? I'm running another sale on Bitcoin right now. Get it while it's hot. The biggest cost is the mortgage industry, regulations, government in the way of housing, right? No, I mean, okay, that could be like, that could be a symptom of it, but really what we have to understand is that this is really symptoms of the Cantillon effect, right? And I know a lot of people want to shake their head and roll their eyes and everything when I say that, but once you see it, once you recognize how the inequality is taking place due to the ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system, there's really no better evidence of that than through property ownership. right? And this is something that I have tried to share many times on this channel. In fact, we did a great interview this weekend with Mike Zuber. There's a link down in the description to it. And we talked about this very thing. And so when you think about what it is that's actually happening within the economy, there is a magnitude of separation that is happening that people aren't quite recognizing why. They want to blame politicians, they want to blame the banking system, they want to blame something out there in order to create an environment that then gives them the ability to then use their average everyday job to acquire what it is that would have seemed to be a reasonable expectation of the American dream, basically doing what their parents did. That doesn't work. There's no way in the world it does, and there's nothing that can be done out there that's going to bring back your average day job to be enough. It's just not going to happen that way anymore. And now we can get mad at that and blame the politicians, or we can look to history, study the Cantillon effect, realize that the ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system that causes the dive into luxurious experiences separates the rich from the poor in such a way that there is no returning. The only thing that can happen is ever-increasing amounts of that or utter collapse. That's it. There's no fixing it. You can't fix it. And even if you did fix it, it's only temporary for a short amount of time. And eventually the underlying economic forces will play out. And then you will find the overwhelming experience of what it is that they were trying to prevent had been playing out the entire time. And it's still there. Very much like what we are experiencing now. Oh man, all the stimulus that everybody received lowered inequality. Did that? Really lower inequality. Like it increased household savings because they really didn't have anywhere to go or spend the money on. And that idea then lowered the inequality, but it didn't really lower the inequality because if you don't have the money and you didn't invest that money and you don't have a return on investment, because of that increase in money that you had, but instead you spent it and you don't have it anymore, who does? I mean, if you don't have it, who has it? If the poor don't have it anymore, where did it go? Went right to the top. And now the inequality is even worse because that's what happens with new money. New money comes into the system and it will separate the rich from the poor every time. Fixing the housing market isn't an option. There will be moments that you will have an opportunity to take advantage of the government subsidy or intervention or something that is going on, but it won't be everlasting. And most likely what you will find is the problem getting worse on account of it, because there is really nothing that the government can do other than increase demand. They can work the demand side of things. They can't really work the supply side. How do you create more homes? Like home builders go build more homes. Like how do you make that happen? The only way you can do it is through the demand side of it. If you can increase the buyer traffic, then the builders will come and build homes. The government subsidized home production is a terrible idea. I don't know how many people think this is a good idea, but it's a terrible idea. You want to government subsidize the purchasing of lumber that is in a depleted inventory. You know how much money they're going to be dumping into that, causing the prices to increase? Because that is inelastic demand that is happening there. And government intervention with, here, let's just shove a bunch of money into this depleted supply. What do you think will happen? Prices of lumber will skyrocket. The availability will become very low. Time will stretch out. Time is money. Do you think that's going to make houses cheaper? Just guessing, right? If all of a sudden you don't have the labor market like you once did, who was vastly out there building homes like crazy, but all of a sudden they're not there anymore because the building of homes has depleted, those people get out of that game. How is it that you just all of a sudden ramp up production? Hey, go build homes. It was like, well, you don't know, like you got to be outfitted to build a home. You can't just go out there and just build it, right? You got to actually be in the production of homes in order to produce homes, right? Like you got to have equipment and people and knowledge and skills and all the other stuff that goes along with it. It's not something you just pick up and just start doing. Now, don't get me wrong. Could you do that? Absolutely, you can do that. But the longer the time goes on where we have less and less production happening, there's less and less people who are playing the game. There's more people who are getting out of it. And this is going to get expensive when it turns. All right, me, my lips, Simon. There is no housing shortage. Okay, Peter. Go make your videos, bro. Go make your videos. All right. Go make your videos and prove yourself, prove your point, man. I'm getting this, like, I don't need to come up with my own theory on this stuff. I use the theories of history. Right? I use the forces. I use the evidence that I have collected over time. It's not me, the uneducated economist, who's just imagining this stuff out of thin air. What I do is I go back through history and I look at things like the Cantillon effect and says, man, what is it that causes the separation between the rich and the poor? Ha ha! Property ownership. No kidding. Well, maybe the concentration of houses into the hands of a few give very little available homes for people to buy. Just because it's empty doesn't mean it's available. You have to understand that part. Just because it's empty, just because it's vacant doesn't mean that it's available. The concentration of wealth is obvious within property ownership. Everything comes down to property. If you are not a property owner or moving towards property ownership, you better be moving towards capitalist. You better be moving towards a capitalistic position. Otherwise, you are going to be left behind. There's going to be a concentration of wealth that is done within the property ownership. And yes, you are maybe very well right. There might be a lot of empty houses out there. I don't have to guess about that. What I do know and understand is that the ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system will then give the handful of people who have first access to that money the ability to concentrate their wealth into property ownership. That is what's happening because that's what happens through history. It's called the Cantillon effect. It's easy. Right? Once you see it, once you recognize it, once you have read the 3 chapters, increase and decrease of money to the state, once you have read that over and over again to the point that you have internalized all the information within it, it makes all this stuff pretty obvious that there is separation that's going to happen and there's nothing that's going to stop it because the central banking system would literally destroy itself trying to figure out a way to prevent it from occurring. Same with the judicial system and same with the administration. If you have not positioned yourself in a way that can deal with the fact that we are going to have a collapse at some point in the future, we just don't know how far out, then you are going to suffer the consequences. You have to be in a position that is outside of that third party risk and then play their game. If you are 100% outside of their position, then you can't play the game. You just can't play it. Most people don't want to play it. They're too scared to play it. They don't want to get in it. And then meanwhile, there's guys out there who are borrowing money to buy cash flowing assets who find themselves in vast amounts of wealth far above everybody else on the wedge. And then people say, oh man, they shouldn't be able to do that. And I'm thinking, you could do it. You don't want them to do it because you don't want to do it? Yeah. Maybe I don't want to do it either, but I don't have any choice. Capitalistic position in the position to accept cash flow from providing value. Yeah. I'm feeling real snarky today. I guess I am. All right. I love tacos, but hot sauce makes me spray. Well, that sucks. All right. Yep. Spot on. That's why silver's 93. I love home taxes. Ugh. Oh, wait, I'm using my real name. Trolls ain't supposed to do that, are they? Uh, avoided some of my comments today. I'm not trying to avoid it. Where are you, Wayne? Dang, needed blue wrenches. All right. In a very real sense, without mortgage of all these people that have homes probably would not have homes. You're going off on a tangent which I never contested. All right, when I stretch time out in my head, Simon, all I see is war, famine, but good luck on that. Well, yeah. I mean, when you think about what it is that's taken place, when you have such massive amounts of inequality that is occurring, what is it that you're eventually going to find happening to the working class individual? Like, if this continues onward, which it will, right? Like, I don't care. Like, you can go ahead. It was like, oh, they're going to do UBI and all this other stuff. And I'm like, all right, I see what happens when you give poor people money. They just give it right back to the rich, and then the inequality gets worse. So, okay, good luck with that. UBI sounds great. Not gonna benefit anybody. I mean, it's gonna benefit the people who first get it, right? That part is gonna be awesome. But after that, it's going to have devastating effects and the inequality will get worse. What eventually will happen is that the people will find that they will spend 50% of their income on food and they will lose their mind. They will lose their mind and they will flip out and they will riot and they will destroy things and they will steal and break stuff and it'll be over because that at that point they have nothing left to lose, so they lose it, and that's an unfortunate thing that happens many times throughout history, and you can actually see that somewhat occurring, right? Well, not somewhat. You can actually see that occurring right now in Iran, and you've seen it in many times in the history. Like, you saw it happening during the Great Financial Crisis in places like Greece and Cyprus, and many other nations over there were facing somewhat of the similar situations. But that's what occurs when the people eventually find that their system has now driven their ability to have a decent standard of living into unavailable. It's unattainable. And that's not necessarily something that was done on purpose, although the act of doing it was deliberate. It was really the result of attempting to keep the system together by ever increasing amounts of new money, right? And they think they can do good with it, but if you don't know what is going to happen, like if you don't realize that you are going to cause devastating effects of inequality by creating new money and then attempting to do good with that new money, it doesn't matter what you do with it. It really doesn't. You can do the most wonderful things with it. What will end up happening is it will concentrate to the hand of the few. It will go to the most industrious people every time. No way that it won't. And that's what's going to occur. And then there will be separation and people will cry. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's the way it goes, All right. The average man cannot afford a $250,000 home on 15 per hour. No, you're right. They're not. There's like 10 people in the chat speaking like they definitively know what's causing housing crisis. Oh, everybody knows what's going on. I mean, I think I'm really the only one who's just like, who isn't blaming financing, who isn't blaming government, who isn't blaming greed and corporate. I mean, you can blame greed. I guess that part is in there. It really comes down to the most industrious people. And you think about those industrious people and what it is that they do. If you are industrious, producing great stuff, and you're selling that stuff out there to the world, then you are most likely going to have a decent way of life, right? Producing great stuff, selling that great stuff out there to the world. How could you not? Now, if you're an entire nation that does that, that's a pretty good position to be in. And now here you are, everybody within the nation producing great stuff and sending that great stuff out there to the world, and the world was sending us their gold. What do you think could happen? So here it is. We have an industrious people who could produce wonderful stuff, send that stuff out there to the world, and get that world to send them their gold. Now we have a position in which that we have people who not only have all the gold coming to them from being industrious people, but now they have the skills, the ability, and the position inside of their country, their economy, and their existence to then buy a piece of property and build a home. This is something that the average everyday person could do. You could work at a regular old job. You could work at a gas station, stop by the lumber yard on your way home, and piece together a house over the course of a summer. And many people used to do that. That was a very common thing to do. How many houses could exist if that's the way they were going together? All these people working at these common jobs, stopping at the lumberyard on their way home and piecing together a house over the course of the summer. How many houses could be available for people? Everybody could own a home. I mean, your uncle could help you build a home. Everybody could build a home. It might not have been a great, wonderful, awesome home with all the granites and all the fancy flooring and all the other stuff that's going on with it, but it was a structure with a roof and the walls and the heating and the plumbing, and you could live in it. And that was called a home. They don't exist like that anymore, and people don't put them together like that anymore. So if there's not as many people doing that, then there's not going to be as many homes available to buy. The only homes that are available to buy are the ones that are incredibly expensive because the people who are building them, they got the money. And they want luxurious experiences because luxury is what separates the rich from the poor. Death by luxuries. Ever increasing amounts of new money separate the rich from the poor. The rich people want luxurious experiences, and those luxurious experiences are not affordable to the average working class person who cannot put their own home together anymore. See the problem we faced? We used to be industrious people. We're not industrious. We're debtors, consumers. That doesn't give you the ability to build your own home, does it? That's the reason why we have a lack of homes. It's because you just don't build them yourself. Dollars don't go to money heaven. People who know how the system works puts dollars into assets, housing, stocks, business, or to preserve their wealth. It's metals or bonds, in metals or bonds. Yeah. All right. Latest home builder sentiment tanked a bit. January buyer traffic lowest since 2023 and then 2012 before that. See, and this is the thing. I keep warning of that very thing, right? In that we are now sitting in a situation in which that the inventory is incredibly depleted. I'm watching lumber prices move up. They're not dramatic, not on the lumber futures, but I'm watching the retail prices now higher than about 2018, which was, the peak of what I had seen prior to COVID. Like COVID, they just blew off the charts, but this is expensive and there's not a lot of demand. That's not good. That's not a good sign. And if even while you're actually seeing the builder sentiment depleting, there's going to be a moment when that changes. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what it is that's going to trigger it. We will talk about it the moment that it happens, but we got to see what it is that's going to do it. We can guess, right? We can guess it's going to be government intervention. We can guess that it's going to be lowering of interest rates. We can guess at all kinds of stuff, but then there will be a reality to the situation that we can focus in on when it actually occurs. So when that happens, we will see a dramatic shift inside of this lumber industry. All right? I've been warning about it for too long now. This is happening. You can see it. What time is it? Alrighty, guys. I got like another 10 minutes here or so, and then I got to go back to work. All right. It's already crashed. It just saved the wrong currency to see the savings. Okay. Google AI saying the labor to build a home is 30 to 50% to build. Just saying. Wow. Is that much? Oh, maybe it is. That seemed a bit high, but maybe it is. I don't know. I knew an old timer that worked at a lumber company back in the 60s, and he bought a truckload of lumber home every other payday and would end up building a really nice house for under 3 grand. Yeah. I don't see another country that can immediately rival the U.S. economy capacity and reserve currency for at least 20 years. Oh, yeah, if at all. If at all, like how many people are going to actually trust another nation to produce a safe and liquid asset like that of the US Treasuries? Like they don't even like the US Treasury. How can you trust another country to replace the US Treasuries? Like you can't. Like there's no like, it's just like, hey, Sweden, you want to step up, I mean, I was like, how do you like they can't do it. Nobody can do it. And so there's no like replacing of the US dollar. It's just it. There will be a replacement that will occur after the collapse. But when will the collapse take place? Like, how far out in the future will that take? What could prevent it? Like, could you go into digital currencies? Can you go into negative interest rates? Can you keep this system going for a long time, like more lifetimes into the future? I mean, who knows how far this can actually be pushed. Now, if you were to ask me a long time ago, how much longer does the dollar have, I would have said it would have been over by now. But understanding the situation much differently than I did back then, I've now come to the understanding that the Federal Reserve has definitely got this position the way that they want it. And that's where I think a lot of times people have gotten very confused about the economy, is that they don't think that the Federal Reserve got it. They don't like, I'm not saying they got it right. What I am saying is they got the position that they wanted. And that's different, right? Because it's not necessarily right. Right is the position that you have taken in accordance to what's going on. Right or wrong, that doesn't make any sense. They got the position that they were looking for, which was elevated inflation and inflation expectation to raise the neutral interest rate. It's occurring right now. And so I have shared that information time and time and time again, and I have given the information to you for free over the last 24 hours through the assembly of a course that I am putting together for you. Now, I left a link down in the description to that course. Now, it is a paid course that is $20 a month right now to join in on that and, participate in the meetings and the additional information that we are going to be putting into those courses until we have completed them. At that time, it will move up to another paywall. But in the meantime, the $20 that you will pay to get the information that I have compiled is going to be incredibly worth it. $20 is a very small price to pay to acquire the credible threat theory that then gives you the ability to see what it is that's happening out here within the economy, to be able to look out there at some of the mainstream media narratives that is being stated and then look at how the markets react to that and then use that information to your advantage. We are putting this course together over the course of, over the time, we are putting this together over the course of the next couple of weeks in order to complete it. Once it has been completed, again, it will be moving up to a $50 paywall, and I will be removing the 7-day free trial. So right now it is still free, right? It was free yesterday. It's free up until, we complete it. And until then, you will have access to that information. Right? And this is the part that I have been trying to push for a long time here, is that once you have acquired this, once you have got it, right, you will never look at the Federal Reserve the same again. 99% of the people have no idea about what it is that's happening. Okay? And it's because the mainstream media narrative has deployed information that has literally directed them away from what it is that's actually occurring within the Federal Reserve's own statements, words, and strategies. Again, I have got the complete package for you to go and review right now for free. Okay? Again, there's a 7-day free trial that is now put on there, so you can get the information, take it home, do whatever it is that you need to do with it, and then from this point on, you're going to find that there's going to be additional information, meetings that break down the individual parts and pieces of this course so that you can internalize it for the best of your abilities. Like, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the group. I'm excited to see what it is that, people are going to get from this. And I'm excited to see how how the thing grows. I mean, to be honest with you, when it comes to sharing this information and getting people to be able to recognize what it is that's going on out there so they can position themselves accordingly for it, when I hear how many people have come to me and thanked me for sharing this information, I tell you, it's exciting for me to get it out there. And knowing that we have this course going and this group started, it just gives me that much more energy to get into it. So, I hope to see you all there. Anyway, links are down in the description. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.